So this is a story called Cherry or the Frog Bride, and it's from the Grimm's Fairy Tales, which is the German stories from Berlin. There was once a king who had 3 sons. Not far from his kingdom lived an old woman who had an only daughter called Cherry. The king sent his sons out to see the world, that they might learn the ways of foreign lands and get wisdom and skill in ruling the kingdom that they were one day to have as their own. But the old woman lived at peace at home with her daughter, who was called Cherry, because she liked cherries better than any other kind of food and would eat scarcely anything else. Now her poor old mother had no garden and no money to buy cherries every day for her daughter, and at last there was no other plan left but to go to a neighbouring nunnery garden and beg the finest she could get of the nuns, for she dared not let her daughter go out by herself, as she was very pretty, and she feared some mischance might befall her. Cherry's taste, however, was well known, and as it happens that the abbess was as fond of cherries as she was, it was soon found out where all the best fruit went, and the Holy Mother was not a little angry at missing some of her stock and finding whither it had gone. The princes, while wandering on, came one day to the town where Cherry and her mother lived, and as they passed along the street they saw the fair maiden standing at the window, combing her long and beautiful locks of hair. Then each of the 3 fell deeply in love with her, and began to say how much he longed to have her for his wife. Scarcely had the wish been spoken when all drew their swords and a dreadful battle began. The fight lasted long, and their rage grew hotter and hotter, when at last the abbess, hearing the uproar, came to the gate. An abbess, by the way, is like the female leader of a monastery where nuns all live, a nunnery, where the cherries were from. Finding that her neighbour was the cause, her old spite against her broke forth at once, and in her rage she wished Cherry turned into an ugly frog, and sitting in the water upon the bridge at the world's end. No sooner said than done, and poor Cherry became a frog and vanished out of their sight. The princes had now nothing to fight for, so, sheathing their swords again, they shook hands as brothers and went on towards their father's home. The old king, meanwhile, found that he grew weak and ill and fitted for the business of reigning. So he thought of giving up his kingdom, but to whom should it be? This was a point that his fatherly heart could not settle, for he loved all his sons alike. "My dear children," said he, "I grow old and weak, and should like to give up my kingdom, but I cannot make up my mind which of you to choose for my heir, for I love you all 3, and besides I should wish to give my people the cleverest and best of you for their king. However, I will give you 3 trials, and the one who wins the prize shall have the kingdom. The first to seek me out 100 ells of cloth so fine that I can draw it through my gold ring." The sons said they would do their best, and set out on the search. The 2 eldest brothers took with them many followers and coaches and horses of all sorts to bring home all the beautiful cloths which they should find, but the youngest went alone by himself. They soon came to where the roads branched off into several ways. 2 ran through smiling meadows with smooth paths and shady groves, but the 3rd looked dreary and dirty and went over barren wastes. The 2 eldest chose the pleasant ways, and the youngest took his leave and whistled along the dreary road. Whenever fine linen was to be seen, the 2 elder brothers bought it, and bought so much that their coaches and horses bent underneath their burden. The youngest, on the other hand, journeyed on many a weary day, and found not a place where he could buy even 1 piece of cloth that was at all fine and good. His heart sunk beneath him, and every mile he grew more and more heavy and sorrowful. At last he came to a bridge over a stream, and there he sat himself down to rest and sigh over his bad luck, when an ugly-looking frog popped its head out of the water and asked, with a voice that had not at all a harsh sound to his ears, what was the matter. The prince said in a pet, "Silly frog, thou canst not help me." "Who told you so?" said the frog. "Tell me what ails you." After a while the prince opened the whole story and told why his father had sent him out. "I will help you," said the frog. So it jumped back into the stream, and soon came back dragging a small piece of linen, not bigger than one's hand, and by no means the cleanest in the world in its look. However, there it was, and the prince was told to take it away with him. He had no great liking for such a dirty rag, but still there was something in the frog's speech that pleased him much, and he thought to himself, "It can do no harm, it is better than nothing." So he picked it up,